A secret American ghost army that never fired a shot, but arguably won a crucial battle of World War II. They used rubber tanks, inflatable artillery, and a symphony of recorded sounds to fool the Nazi high command. This wasn't a spy thriller, it was real. And the true scope of its impact on the war and on the careers of the artists, designers, and future CEOs who ran it remains one of the most astonishing, untold stories of 20th century America. The year was 1944. The blood and thunder of D-Day had passed, but the grinding, deadly reality of the European campaign was just beginning to set in. Allied forces were pushing inland from the beaches of Normandy, but every mile was paid for in steel and lives. The German war machine, though battered, was far from broken, and their resistance was stiff, methodical, and often brutally effective. In the midst of this deadly chaos, American military planners in London, specifically Colonel Billy Harris and Major Ralph Ingersoll, were cooking up a plan so radical, so completely outside the doctrine of conventional warfare, that it required not just soldiers, but a brigade of artists and eccentrics. This was the genesis of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, officially a small, innocuous unit, but unofficially known by the most fitting of titles, the Ghost Army. Their mission? Not to fight, but to deceive, to stage a traveling roadshow of illusion along the Western Front, convincing the formidable German forces that American units were where they were not, and in numbers far greater than their actual strength. They were going to fight with imagination, not firepower. The men recruited for this top-secret project were, to put it mildly, an unconventional lot for the U.S. Army. They weren't pulled from infantry divisions. They were plucked from art schools, advertising agencies, fashion houses, and recording studios. Imagine a roll call. There was a young fashion student named Bill Blass, soon to be one of America's most celebrated designers. There was Ellsworth Kelly, a gifted painter who would become a giant of abstract expressionism. There was photographer Art Kane, whose iconic images would later define the jazz and rock age. These men, along with architects, engineers, set designers, and sound technicians, formed the four pillars of the Ghost Army's multimedia deception. Visual deception, the 603rd Camouflage Engineers, the Masters of the Inflatable; sonic deception, the 3132 Signal Service Special Company, the Sound Wizards; radio deception, the Signal Company Special, the spoof radio operators; and security and performance, the 406th Combat Engineers, the security and the actors. The 603rd, in particular, was a spectacle to behold. Their arsenal consisted of rubber inflatable tanks, jeeps, trucks, and artillery. An M4 Sherman tank, weighing 33 tons of solid steel, was replaced by a 93-pound rubber bladder that four men could lift and inflate with a gasoline-powered air compressor in minutes. From the sky, or even from a distance on the ground, the illusion was flawless. The artists used subtle paint detailing and careful camouflage to ensure the rubber props looked like the real, formidable steel beasts of war. It was a conflict waged not on the field of fire, but on a canvas of human perception. Their equipment was not meant to survive a single artillery shell. It was meant to survive the scrutiny of a German reconnaissance plane and the sharp eyes of a counterintelligence officer. The training itself was absurdly theatrical. At secret camps, these artists learned how to impersonate the real fighting divisions they were meant to replace, down to the last detail. They wore counterfeit unit patches, drove trucks with fake insignia, and mastered the art of leaking false information to locals and potential enemy spies in French cafes. Their life was a constant, high-stakes theatrical performance. The stage was set. The Ghost Army was ready to ship out, carrying not heavy weaponry, but the tools of deception. Their first major performance was about to begin, and it would change the tide of war in ways no one, least of all the Nazis, could have ever anticipated. The Ghost Army, officially the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, landed in France shortly after the fury of the D-Day invasion had subsided. They were a small, tightly knit group of approximately 1,100 men, a fraction of the tens of thousands they were supposed to represent. Their arrival was not heralded by fanfare, but by secrecy and the low hiss of air compressors. Their first critical mission, Operation A, took place near the Fauille in early June 1944. The goal was audacious: to cover the flank of General George S. Patton's mighty Third Army as it pivoted east, launching a pivotal breakout from the Normandy beachhead. Patton's forces needed every minute of misdirection they could get to achieve maximum surprise. The Ghost Army had to convince German intelligence that the formidable U.S. 80th Infantry Division was still holding the line when, in reality, the 80th had already slipped away to join Patton's push. The visual deception? A canvas of rubber. The artists of the 603rd Camouflage Engineers went to work immediately. They didn't just inflate the rubber tanks. They staged a meticulously crafted scene of a large, entrenched division. Ellsworth Kelly, using his keen eye for form and shadow, supervised the placement of the fake tanks, ensuring that from the distance of a German observation post, or, more critically, from the altitude of a Luftwaffe reconnaissance plane, the rubber props cast authentic shadows and blended seamlessly with the terrain. These weren't toys. They were incredibly detailed optical illusions. They even drove actual jeeps and trucks in loops around the staging area to create fresh, realistic tire tracks in the dirt, the signature sign of an army digging in. One of the greatest challenges was maintenance. The thin rubber shells were vulnerable to snipers' bullets, passing shrapnel, or even curious cows. Any puncture meant the immediate and comical collapse of a 30-ton tank. The men often had to perform rapid field surgery, patching holes with rubber cement, a bizarre contrast to the genuine combat raging miles away. The sonic deception, the roar of nothing. If the inflatable props provided the visual illusion, the 3132 Signal Service Company provided the soul of the deception, the sound. Equipped with enormous, custom-built, 50-pound amplifiers and speakers, some of the most powerful ever built at the time, the sound engineers created a complete sonic battlefield. Using sophisticated magnetic tape recordings made back in the U.S. at the Army's testing grounds, they could project the entire life cycle of an American armored division. Before dawn, the faint sounds of cooks starting fires and soldiers yawning. Daybreak, the clanking of tank treads being serviced and the deep rumble of engines warming up. The attack, the unmistakable synchronized cacophony of artillery fire and machine gun bursts. The sound engineers, often working in total darkness right up on the front lines, played these tracks in precise 20-minute loops, adjusting the volume and direction of the speakers to match the acoustics and topology of the battlefield. They created a three-dimensional soundscape that convinced German acoustic intelligence listeners that a massive, noisy American division was preparing to attack right where they were. The radio spoofery. The Signal Company special added the final, crucial layer of misdirection. Operating specialized radio equipment, they perfectly mimicked the real division's Morse code keys. Each operator had a unique fist or rhythm and radio traffic. They sent bogus supply requests, fake personnel reports, and convincing logistical chatter, all in the code and rhythm of the genuine 80th Division. The Ghost Army's actions were so convincing that German radio intercepts and field intelligence reports confirmed to Hitler's high command that the 80th Division was indeed present and preparing for a major push against their current position. This crucial intelligence blunder kept German reinforcements pinned down, buying Patton the time and surprise he desperately needed for his legendary rapid advance across France. Operation A was an unqualified success. When the Ghost Army quietly slipped away, the genuine 80th Division was already miles away, exploiting the gap the deception had created. The Ghost Army had saved countless lives, yet no one, outside of the highest echelons of command, would know it for decades. They were actors who truly changed history, and their performance had just begun. The men of the Ghost Army, mostly young, idealistic, and deeply creative, found themselves in the bizarre position of being frontline soldiers armed primarily with sketch pads and air pumps. The unit was highly unusual because it was not only secretive, but also highly educated. The average soldier in the 603rd Camouflage Engineers was a graduate of an art school like Pratt or the Rhode Island School of Design. Their daily reality was a constant tightrope walk between professional theater and mortal danger. They wore the uniforms of the divisions they were impersonating, often driving recklessly to create the illusion of a rapid advance. Yet they were frequently without any real combat protection. Life with the inflatables. The inflatable tanks, dummies, were the stars of their show, and they provided both operational success and endless dark humor. The look. The artists were perfectionists. They didn't just inflate the rubber shells, they added meticulously painted details like rust stains, mud splatters, and even tiny, realistic exhaust vents to complete the illusion. Bill Blass, future fashion giant, became adept at painting camouflage patterns that broke up the silhouette of the phony vehicles against the European landscape. The misadventures. The light weight of the inflatables caused frequent trouble. A sudden gust of wind could send a tank tumbling across a field, requiring a frantic, silent chase to retrieve the errant piece of heavy armor before dawn. On one occasion, a farmer's cow decided an inflatable Jeep looked like an interesting new chew toy, puncturing it and prompting an emergency patch job. These incidents were terrifying because discovery meant not only the failure of the mission, but potentially the lives of the real soldiers they were protecting. The art of performance. Beyond the props, the men had to act the part of a massive resting division. They deliberately talked loudly in local French taverns about their fictional division's size, future movements, and overwhelming strength, all while leaving false maps or discarded secret documents for German sympathizers, Vichy collaborators, to find. The unit's incredible success depended entirely on absolute secrecy. If the Germans realized they were fighting a phantom, the entire Allied strategic advantage would evaporate, potentially costing thousands of lives. The most terrifying moment of security failure occurred during a staging operation in a small Belgian town. A German counterintelligence officer, dressed in civilian clothes, managed to infiltrate the area. He engaged a young Ghost Army soldier, a private with a background in advertising, in casual conversation. The officer was highly skilled, asking subtle questions about unit size and equipment. The young private, tired and perhaps a little too eager to impress, began boasting about the clever new camouflage techniques their unit was employing. Though he didn't reveal the rubber tanks directly, his nervous, evasive answers alerted the German officer that something fundamentally was wrong with the unit he was observing. The officer was apprehended moments later by a sharp-eyed security guard from the 406 Combat Engineers, but the damage was nearly done. The incident led to an immediate, comprehensive security crackdown. General Eisenhower's command issued a top-secret classification on the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops that was so severe it wasn't lifted until 1996, more than 50 years after the war ended. The men were given strict, non-negotiable orders. If they were captured, they were to reveal nothing. If they survived the war, they were never to speak of the unit's true purpose, not to their wives, their children, or their best friends, for the rest of their lives. For the Ghost Army veterans, the decades that followed were marked by a strange, collective silence. They had participated in one of the most brilliant and life-saving campaigns of the war, yet they were forbidden the right to boast, to write memoirs, or even to receive public recognition. They returned to their art studios and careers, carrying an extraordinary secret, a war they had won by lying better than anyone else. This enforced silence only heightened the tension as they prepared for their most dangerous and strategically critical mission yet, protecting a massive river crossing into the heart of the German homeland. By March 1945, the war was nearing its climax. The Allies were poised to cross the Rhine, a heavily fortified, deep and fast-flowing river that the German army was prepared to defend to the last man. The success of the entire final push depended on the ability of the U.S. Ninth Army to cross and establish a secure bridgehead. General Dwight Eisenhower's command planned for the real Ninth Army crossing, Operation Plunder, to take place north of the city of Dusseldorf, near the town of Rheinberg. But to guarantee success, the Germans had to be convinced the assault would happen 20 miles south, near the town of Viersen. This was the Ghost Army's magnum opus, Operation Viersen. The stage, 20 miles of illusion. The Ghost Army, now seasoned actors in the theater of war, had to create the illusion of two full divisions, over 30,000 men and 600 armored vehicles assembling for a river crossing that required massive logistics, pontoon bridges, and artillery preparation. For 3 days, the 1,100 men of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops worked feverishly. They didn't just stage vehicles, they staged a military environment. The bridgeheads, the men used inflatable barges, boats, and even fake camouflage nets draped over nothing to create the appearance of materials being staged for a bridge construction, a colossal undertaking visible for miles. The visuals and Ellsworth Kelly, using his artistic training to manipulate perspective, designed full-size dummy pontoon bridge segments. These were placed along the riverbank at Viersen, looking absolutely authentic through binoculars from the German side. The fake equipment and troop movements were coordinated to peak exactly 24 hours before the real crossing at Rheinberg, ensuring maximum German readiness at the wrong location. The auditory assault. The sound engineers ran their greatest, most complex loop yet. The cacophony of two full divisions, hundreds of trucks, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of heavy pontoon boats being launched, the distant roar of massed artillery boomed across the Rhine Valley. Crucially, they timed the sound to suggest a full 24 hours of preparation, drawing in German intelligence and artillery splatters. The tension and the danger. Unlike previous operations, the Ghost Army was no longer safely operating behind the lines. They were deliberately positioned in the direct line of German reconnaissance and artillery fire. The Germans, believing a massive crossing was imminent at Viersen, began targeting the area. Shells exploded near the staging areas. The artists found themselves dodging genuine shrapnel while inflating fake tanks. One unit was reportedly pinned down for hours by accurate mortar fire. The absurdity reached its peak when a team had to abandon their inflated tanks because the rubber could not withstand the near misses of incoming rounds. Despite the danger, the Ghost Army maintained the illusion. They were often tasked with driving real jeeps and trucks in circles to create traffic congestion, the visible sign of a huge army preparing to move. They wore the patches of the 30th and 79th Infantry Divisions, swaggering in nearby towns, deliberately allowing their presence to be reported back to Berlin. The stunning result. The deception was flawless. German intelligence intercepts confirmed that the High Command was fully convinced the main Allied effort would take place at Viersen. Consequently, German reserve units, artillery batteries, and counterattack forces were held back and concentrated in the Viersen sector. When the real Ninth Army launched Operation Plunder 20 miles north at Rheinberg, they achieved strategic surprise. The German defenses were thin, their reserve forces were out of position, and the crossing was achieved with significantly lighter casualties than anticipated. After the success of the crossing, the Ghost Army quietly dismantled their inflatable arsenal, turned off their powerful speakers, and drove away in the night, melting back into the shadows. Operation Viersen was their final, highest impact performance, a battle fought and won entirely with a bluff, saving thousands of lives and accelerating the end of the war in Europe. Immediately following the successful completion of Operation Viersen and the final collapse of German resistance in Europe, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops were quietly deactivated. There was no victory parade, no commendations pinned on their chests, and no widespread public acknowledgement of their incredible, life-saving contributions. The men, the artists, designers, and sound technicians who had perfected the art of military deception were shipped home, instructed to adhere strictly to the top-secret classification, covering their every action. The weight of the secret. For the veterans of the Ghost Army, the post-war period was defined by a profound and strange burden. They had witnessed the brutality of the front lines, suffered the stress of being unarmed targets, and succeeded in high-stakes military operations, yet they could tell no one the truth of their heroism. The silence at home. Many veterans struggled to reconcile the immense importance of their real military service, saving thousands of lives through deception, with the ordinary, non-combat roles they were forced to claim. They couldn't explain why they drove tanks, even rubber ones, or why their unit had constantly shifted locations across Europe. The secret became a silent bond among the few who shared it, and a source of quiet frustration for those who deserved recognition. The transition to culture. The men returned to civilian life, but their wartime experience with large-scale illusion and human perception deeply influenced their future careers. Bill Blass took the lessons of visual camouflage and illusion and applied them to fashion, becoming a master of making clothing appear effortless and sophisticated. His ability to manipulate texture and form owed much to the rubber tanks. Ellsworth Kelly dedicated himself fully to painting, translating the massive, geometric, and often abstract forms of military staging into his iconic, hard-edge abstract art. Others became architects who understood light and shadow, and advertising executives who specialized in mass psychological manipulation, all skills honed on the battlefields of Europe. Chapter 7. The Unveiling. For over 40 years, the Ghost Army was a phantom not only to the enemy, but to their own nation. The official records were locked away, and the veterans upheld their oath of silence. The fight for recognition. The push to declassify the Ghost Army's records began in the late 1980s, driven by a few persistent veterans and military historians who suspected a deeper, more artistic story lay within the archives. They argued that the unit's success was a crucial piece of World War II history that deserved to be taught, studied, and celebrated. Finally, in 1996, the U.S. government officially declassified the records of the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. The revelation was met with astonishment. Newspapers ran front-page stories describing the rubber tanks and the sonic warfare. The public and even many military personnel were fascinated by the story of how a small unit of artists had successfully fooled the entire German high command and repeatedly saved major combat divisions. The legacy of imagination. In the decades that followed, the Ghost Army received the recognition they were due. Documentaries, books, and museum exhibits finally celebrated the unique heroism of these soldier artists. The story of the Ghost Army is not just a footnote in military history, it is a profound testament to the power of American ingenuity, creativity, and the psychological dimensions of modern warfare. It proves that a battle can be won not just by the weight of metal, but by the lightness of rubber. Not just by the blast of a cannon, but by the convincing sound of a phantom army. These were the men who fought the war by pretending, saving thousands of lives in the process. Their legacy is the ultimate truth, that imagination can be the most powerful weapon of all.